Okay, welcome. This is Pat Dewar. I'm really excited about what's going to happen tonight. I've been in this series of working on sharing how a gift, an internal motivational gift, things that each of us and all of us have, or I believe that were given to them at a much younger age, possibly even at birth. But the thing is that how many of us actually tap into our gifts in a way that really propels us in our future and in our life and what things that we do. I think all of us have either done things or been in situations where we were the round peg in the square hole, right? We were the one that was trying to do the best that we could, but we didn't fit where we were at because of it was just a strain. It was just not us. But then there have been other times in our lives where it was so much, there was just pleasure. I mean, you would do things, you would be able to just stay with it. You'd be invigorated. You actually get charged up all day long, or whatever you're doing in that moment. You're thinking, how do I do a lot of this? And so that was kind of what started this. Today, I've got a very good friend of mine. We've been friends for years and years now. 2003 or 4, and I've watched Rob Skiba go through a tremendous transition. I've seen him go from broke and busted to amazing, successful author of 8 books. Is that right, Rob? 8 books?
10, I think.
Well, I'm a little behind the season, but 8 to 10 books. Okay, 10 books. And then he's done an enormous amount of work on the internet and video. But what was so amazing is that he's one of the best examples that I've seen of somebody who found their gift and actually started operating within it. And then what was amazing is how that gift prepared a place for him to stand. It's a gift that has opened up his mission, destiny in so many ways. And so, with Rob, I just want to say, thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Yeah, Pat, thanks for having me. Yeah, we go back to 2003. Well, actually, that depends. If you were directing part 3 when I went through part 1 in September 2002, so we may go back that far.
Wow, that's a long time. Yeah. And then what was fun is that I remember the moment that I knew you'd probably be with us for a while. It still chokes me up.
Yeah.
I remember watching you, and I was listening to your story, and I just went, I know where you've been. Hang out with us. Watch what happens. And
I'm glad I did.
Well, the funny thing is that I've seen you go through so many iterations of really taking your gift and bringing it forward and offering it forward, and how it's taken you through pretty much your life story. Now, what I'd like to do for everybody else is kind of walk them through the same gift. I'm going to walk you through the test, point out, you tell me, which one fits best. It'd be interesting to see if it really has changed much. I think we were mentioning that off air, but I think you'll probably end up being in the same neighborhood. But then one of the things that's happened through the years is that many of the gifts, if we find our primary, awesome, but what happens is that we tend to typically grow and balance our lives with the gifts. The gifts should balance each other as you grow in them. And I've seen that in both of us in so many ways. But let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen and then walk you through this. I just said, wrong one. Okay. So there we go. Hit the right button. Things work better. Share my screen. And okay. So sharing my screen, and what I'm going to do is pull up a couple of different tools that I found to be really powerful, and we're going to walk you through the test and walk you through the characteristics, make sure that they all seem to still fit, And let me, I don't know why that's going there. Okay, I'm going to do it this way. Let's use the hard drive, which is always better. And downloads and internal gifts test. So we'll start with that. Why is it not going to internal gifts test? I want to open that. There it is. Okay. Now I'll make it big so that you guys, so that all of the watchers can see this. Rob, you see the screen okay? Is it coming through?
Yep.
Okay. Now, in your life, would you rather work with your hands or speak with your mouth? Just naturally, what are you more inclined to do?
I've always had a hard time with that question because I enjoy doing both, but I would say probably these days more speak with my mouth.
Okay, so speak with your mouth. And in forming an opinion about something, do you go by what you feel or believe already, or research it until you're confident?
Research it till I'm confident.
Okay, so number 2. So what's fascinating to me is I remember how you went through this originally. And back in 2003, you were more of a hand person.
Mm-hmm.
And you went through this, and it's, you respond to how people, practical needs or how people feel. Mm-hmm. And then would you rather help somebody by doing something for them or giving them money? You
were a 3,
number 3.
Yeah.
Now, number 2, number 3, number 1 through 7 doesn't mean a lot until we look at the characteristics. And when we look at the characteristics of each of these, what's fascinating to me is how many of these just resonate with the people that have looked at this in the past. And why am I having a hard time finding characteristics? Characteristics of 7 gifts, survey said, right here. And here they are. And just so that if you were looking through that test, I didn't go through the whole thing because I really just wanted to identify Rob's gift initially. And if you want a copy of that test, by the way, it's real simple. Email me, patrick@doersuccess.com. I'll gladly send it out to you in the characteristics as well. The numbers were 1 through 7. And so number 1 is mercy. Number 2, teaching. Number 3, service. Number 4, giving. Number 5, professing. Number 6, exhortation. Number 7, administration. Now, in the little test we just did, you came back teaching, which is what I came back when I went through this. And I have to admit, I said, no, I'm not smart enough to teach. But for you, Rob, when I think about the things that you do, when we look through this, presents the truth in a logical, systematic way, loves to study and do research, tends to neglect the practical applications of the truth. I know where that comes in for me. I don't know where it comes in for you because you're a 50-year-old Adonis and I'm not. Is that I have this amazing elliptical over there that it's kind of covered with, anyways, point is yes, sometimes we know what to do. We don't always do. We do know what to do. Easy sidetracked by new interest. Now, I've never, ever seen you, Rob, get into be sidetracked by new interest. Yeah. Yep. That is, I've seen that at least once. Tends to be emotionally self-controlled, solid, often has a select circle of friends. Fascinating. Now, just so that everybody sees this, because I want to show these, show this. I want to get you talking about, Rob, how this has manifested the life that you have and that you lead, what the impact you have. And it's fascinating when I look back at service and the things that were there. easily recognizes the practical needs and is quickly to meet them, has a hard time saying no to requests, needs to feel appreciated, tends to do more than is asked for, does doesn't usually want to lead, tends to be a perfectionist, is critical with others. Now, I know initially when we looked at that, you said that was you. Now I totally get the other one with 10 books and I don't know, a gazillion people that follow you in so many different areas. Let me do this. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. And I want you to tell me, Rob, how is it that the gift of teaching has really manifested and created the career you have today?
Well, let's go back to 2003 when I took that test the first time, and it came up service. Whenever we took that test in the classroom setting that we did, you had us all read through all of the 7 definitions, for each one of them, and the question was, does the number that you picked, does that fit? And so I didn't go right to the number, number 3. I went through and read all of them, and I'm like, I fit easily 80%, in some cases more, of all of them. And I was like, service. It fits, but, and so I raised my hand, and you said, well, think of it like an umbrella. That the goal of this test is a very simplified test. I had taken other tests, 300 question tests, that go way, way deeper into these gifts idea. This is a very generic test designed to help you find your dominant gift. And what you said is, if you've been, especially if you've been a Christian for a long time, these gifts may have manifested over the years. As you get one and you kind of master that one, you get another one, and so forth. So you may have more than one, but they will all operate under the authority or the umbrella of the primary. And you're like, okay, take a look at what you do, and as my life progressed here in Texas and I got a job and ended up starting working in a ministry, you're like, dude, look at all the ways you serve, right? Everything that you do, all the other gifts and the things that you do, you are doing it for free. You're serving, even to the point of getting involved with that ministry and working there as a trainer and then later as a director for free, and here I have 181,000 subscribers on YouTube now, again, giving everything away for free. It's like I've written about probably several thousand pages of blog content spread out over multiple websites. I made a mistake. It's actually 11 books. I just realized I counted them.
Nice. I'm still working on book number 1. I've been published, but I'm not, not my own book yet.
Well, even the content of those books, all the books and DVDs that I've done, people can get all that content for free. People buy my books and DVDs because they want to, not because it's their only option. I'm always putting it out there. So all of that is indicative of a service gift. So when you asked me at the beginning of the test today, which would you rather do, work with your hands or speak with your mouth? Well, over the years since 2003, from 2004 to 2010, I was a missionary. So I literally traveled the world and I was working with my hands, working with cameras, working with missionaries, helping them and doing things. So I would say probably right through 2010, at least, I was still operating in the gift of service. As I began to do research and start sharing things, because teaching was always very high. And because I thought I would come out
magnificent teacher.
Thank you. I thought the teacher was a better fit for me when I took the test in 2003, but I answered the questions honestly, so I came out service. But it's flipped now. And really since 2011, when I started really doing a lot of research and writing blogs and putting it out there and starting a radio show and talking about the content and interviewing others, I started working much more in the path of a teacher. And so that it doesn't surprise me that that's what it comes out to today. But in either case, I was very satisfied in what I was doing, because my career path. You challenged me to try to make my profession, my passion, my profession, and I took that challenge, and it's very, very satisfying and very fulfilling to actually be walking in your gifting, doing what you love to do, and earning a living doing it.
Yeah, and you're so gifted as a teacher. You've taught, you directed the program that I directed for all those years. You were somebody who is a great insight. One of the things that's been interesting through the years is watching you shift from kind of the work with the hands to moving into the other side, because you are a voracious learner. You're always just ingesting like mass quantities of information, and when you get involved in something, you dig probably deeper than you should. Inside folks, sorry.
Well, let me just address that. And I actually, when I was teaching the curriculum myself, I would try to animate, each of the definitions and try to get people to understand, in kind of a comical way, each of those bullet points and how they play out in somebody's life. And when you look at a teacher, often distracted or easily, finding other interests and stuff like that. And one of the things I used to say is, as a researcher, I love footnotes, but footnotes are both my friend and my enemy. The reason I love footnotes, like I can really appreciate an author who takes the time to annotate and show where they got their information, because that gives me the opportunity to then research what they searched, and look into it. But so I'll be reading a book and there'll be a footnote. Oh, and I'll be like, man, that sounds interesting. So then, typically what I'll do is immediately go online and, look and see if there's anything online on it. And there's a book on Amazon or whatever, I'll order it and get it. And then of course you read that book, and then the next book will have footnotes. And now here's a perfect example of this. I had to laugh when you're doing that. That's why I reached back there to grab something, because I was reading something. Oh gosh, it was sometime last year. I was doing some research for something and dealing with gravity, the subject of gravity. And the simple fact of the matter is, nobody knows what gravity is. Yes, we can throw something up and it falls down. Everybody gets that. How does it work? Is it a function of mass, like Einstein and Newton would have you believe? Or is it something more to do with electrogravitics, which is something most people are not aware of? However, the book that I was reading at the time was talking about a guy named Townsend Brown in the 1920s, who was talking about electrogravitics and had mastered anti-gravity in the 1920s. So I'm like, what? So I look it up, and this became a really, truly fascinating book, The Hunt for Zero Point by Nick Cook. Fantastic book. And he thoroughly annotates what he's talking about. And of course, that led to this book, Electrogravitics Parts 1 and 2 by this Dr. Malone guy, which led to this book by Paul Lavalette, Secrets of Anti-Gravity Propulsion, and talking about UFOs and stuff like that. That, of course, led to the work of Dr. Michael Salla and Antarctica's Hidden History, Corporate Foundations of Secret Space Programs, which led to the Navy's Secret Space Program and Nordic Extraterrestrial Alliance. So you can see how I went down a very interesting path from one little footnote that I read somewhere about some dude working with anti-gravitics in the 1920s. And so consequently, and what I say when I teach the curriculum is, I always have numerous books in various stages of completion scattered around me at all times. There's just one example of it.
Yeah. Can anyone else say squirrel?
Squirrel.
Squirrel. Not that I would know anything about that. I mean, whatever. It's one of those things that I crack up. I had a friend of mine test me a few years ago on strength. It was Strength Finders, and they have kind of an interesting. But she said my first two were like input learner. And I went, huh? Input learner? She goes, yeah. It means you're kind of addicted to information. And I went, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, just because I have, this going now, and I've got a game going over here on my phone, and I've got, my email back here, and that, and then I got a TV show over there, and I got some subliminal stuff in here, all at the same time. I don't know what you're. Yeah, I feel.
And you taught yourself to be a speed reader, so you could just get through it even quicker.
And remember whatever I wanted, which is kind of fun-ish. Yeah. Okay. So the point is teachers tend to. Woo, yeah, and you just got a demonstration of that. That was a live presentation of exactly how fast teachers can get sidetracked by a footnote.
And, for me, because I love it so much, I'm like, this is amazing. I want to tell everybody about it. Well, I don't, that's why I have a YouTube channel with 180,000 subscribers. But, the simple fact is, I just read off a bunch of stuff right there that maybe a lot of your listeners are like, secret space program.
Really? Well, where's your tinfoil hat?
What do you
know you know where it is too.
Yeah, I do. But of course, the 180,000 subscribers that I have are all probably very like-minded people. But that represents a small segment, certainly, of society. The average person probably could care less about antigravitics and that kind of stuff. So when it says you tend to have a select group of friends, that's probably very true.
But out of a billion people, a micro niche is pretty big. So yeah, I feel you. The funny thing is this. I want to share my screen again because I want to show something, how powerful understanding your gift actually is, and how Rob has literally created so many things just by operating out of that one gifting, service, but teaching being such a strong secondary for him. Well, when I think about I put this PowerPoint together years ago with you, Rob, and it was funny because I was talking to Rich Cavanis the other day, and we were talking about how this concept really how it came into our community, if I could call it that. And okay, so I'm going to do one thing real quick so that everybody kind of gets this for those that are watching it. I'm not trying to blow by anybody or anything like that. 1 is mercy, 2 teachings, 3 serving, 4 giving, 5 professing, 6 exhortation, and 7 administration. Now, mercy, they're the ones that are the feelers of everybody's pain all the time. Teachers tend to talk too much. Now, one thing I've noticed about you and me and some of the other people that have come back teachers, Rob, is that we really listen to the way that people say things, like the words they use, and then we'll craft we'll convert the image that's in our head into a language they can hear, so that the image they receive is the one that we actually sent. And you're a master at that. When we look at service, I see amazing gifts, all these things that you do, you operate in. You have a huge heart, give your stuff away. Giving, these folks tend to be the ones, seed time, harvest, they really get that. It's fascinating how they're the attractor factor for a lot of things in an organization. The giver just it isn't that they give everything. They might just walk up to you and say, "Hey, it's Bob's birthday next week. Give me $2 for the cake we're going to get him." And you're like, "I don't even like Bob." And sure enough, they'll get that $2 out of you before you know what happened to you, and you're wondering how that happened. I mean, it's like a Jedi mind trick. It's crazy. And then professing. Now, here's something that I want to propose to you, Rob, as we go into this, where my gift has been teaching and exhortation, which you're very strong in those. But I've seen this grow in you over the last 8 years. Mm-hmm. Seeing things as either black or white. Easily perceives the character of individuals and groups. Is frank, outspoken. Let me make sure you heard that. Outspoken. Okay, you get it. Maybe blunt or evaluative, as strong. No, not that. I don't know. Strong opinions and convictions.
What's funny about that is
Maybe intolerant of others' views.
yeah,
May struggle with self-image. I'm
all of the above.
I'm just thinking that maybe this gift has been growing in you for the last 8 years, especially. But we'll talk more about that and why I say that. Exhortation, loves to encourage others, focuses on working with people, finds the truth. I mean, these are the spiritual bolt cutters in your universe. They're the ones that go, if I can do it, you can do it. And the administrations, highly motivated, organized. They are the ones that bring order to chaos. They will easily organize the resources of people and accomplish tasks and goals. It's written into their DNA. It's an amazing gift. And we can all grow in any of these. It was funny. A lot of times a teacher doesn't tend to stay on time and trying to do a workshop. And initially when I started, I was so grateful that I had Susan Alman as my mentor, and she's the greatest administrator I've ever known. And I learned to do it. And people would kind of tease me on not being on time, and I go, name once in the last 6 years that I have not met my time. And they're like, oh, we can't think of one. I said, thank goodness for good administrator mentors. Now, you can call me, or you can email me if you'd like to get that test. One of the things, though, that I want to do is actually take you to something. Well, it was here. Let me do this, because this is something that you brought to the table. You said, hey, have you ever heard of Bill Bright, Francis Schaeffer, Lauren Cunningham? In fact, you know this better than I do. You were the one that brought it to me. Do you want to tell this part of the story?
Sure. Yeah, I had stumbled across again a footnote somewhere on something dealing with this thing that it became known as the Seven Mountain Prophecy, which just the phrase alone caught my attention. What is Seven Mountain Prophecy? I looked into it and found that, so the story goes, those three gentlemen that you had on the screen there, Lauren Cunningham, Bill Bright, and Francis Schaeffer, who many would recognize in the Christian community as pretty prominent, well-known speakers, teachers. They had come together at some point and started talking, and each of them had, in their own way, in isolated, they had come to certain conclusions and revelations, if you will, that they believe God was showing them on how to be more effective at reaching the world. And they came together at some function or something and started talking with each other and sharing what they had been experiencing and learning, and very quickly realized that each of them had been given sort of separate components of a bigger vision, which eventually morphed into what became known as the Seven Mountain Prophecy. And going back to your screen there, the seven mountains are identified as religion, family, education, media, arts and entertainment, government, and what's the third one there? Business.
Business, yeah.
Business. Yeah, and that these mountains, or another way of looking at them, might be spheres of influence. These are each very powerful spheres of influence, mountains that have a profound impact on our culture. And it doesn't take much to, you just look at that list and see, well, yeah, obviously religion has had a huge impact on our culture, family, obviously, education, media, arts and entertainment, government, business, all those things. And so the concept was, well, what if we could, quote unquote, occupy those mountains? How much more effective would we be as Christians at reaching the world with the message that we believe in, that we want people to know?
Well, and isn't that what they were saying, is this is the stuff that changes nations, not
nations,
just
yeah.
It changes. It's the stuff that, if you look at how someone, or not just how someone can affect, but how a nation is changed, these are the areas that you're going to have to address. So go on with your next point.
Yeah. So exactly. And by and large, I think Christians have sort of abdicated their position of influence on many of these, especially media, arts, and entertainment. We may get family and religion down, but how effectively are we impacting government or business? And again, I stress media and arts and entertainment. Those two caught my attention, not just because those are the two that my giftings align with, but because
let's show that, because that was the thing that was such a revelation, is how
right on.
the gifts were tied to the mountains.
Yeah, that was, one day I was looking at, I'm like, well, I got 7 mountains here, and we have 7 gifts. And I started thinking, I wonder. So then I just, started looking into it and thought, wow, sure enough, each of the 7 gifts that test reveals just so happen to line up perfectly with one, each gift lined up with a specific mountain. So we see mercy aligns with family. That pretty much goes without saying, just like teacher aligns with education. Duh. Right. Server, arts and entertainment. Why is that? Well, why is it that we always hear the phrase, starving artist? Right. Yeah. Artists, God bless them. I am one of them. We tend to not be all that business savvy, so we struggle that way, and we, give everything away for free. And you always got that guy playing the guitar in the corner with his can, there. So he's serving with the gifts and talents and abilities that he has, arts and entertainment. Giver aligns with business. Well, duh. One of the definitions there is that a giver has the ability to not just give money, but to receive money. Because why? He's a conduit. He learns how to administer the money well. It doesn't just come in and he hoards it. It comes in and then he uses it for whatever, whatever he does. Professing media. Well, media is supposed to profess the truth, right? Exhortation line. Now you got that lining up with the
inspiration, but there was reason for it. See, one of the things that it was kind of funny, because and
religion,
you probably had this revelation we just talked, and you made it feel like we shared the idea. Because I thought we were like talking about this together. We were doing it, What was so funny is that when I went inspiration, actually it was exhortation and religion. Okay, that's the one that was in there. And recently I went in, and because so many people have such a negative connotation of religion, and you and I both know the origin of the word religion goes back into a Greek word, religios, which means bondage.
Mm-hmm.
And totally get why there'd be such a negative connotation there. But what does inspiration mean? Well, that word is to fill
with the
Spirit of God.
Yep.
Okay. To inspire, to inspirit someone. Okay. And so that's why that's there on my screen. But go ahead, inspiration, and then
an exhortation being a gift that people are excited about something that they want to share, right? So usually that's the case with people who have a relationship with God, is they want to share it with others. So it's a natural lineup. And administration lining up with government, well, again, it's sort of a no-brainer, right? I mean, I think if anybody just takes the time to look at the definitions of each of the gifts and then look at each of these spheres or mountains of influence, you can see that this alignment is perfect. So then, you and I got together and we're like, okay, so how do we empower the audience to walk out their gifting in a sphere or mountain of influence, right? And I think you were talking about we always made the joke about the giver, who, or a server or an exhorter or a mercy, like, are you going to put a mercy in collections?
Yeah. Yeah, that actually happened. Remember, somebody came in, and took the test, and they went back to this call center and said, we need everybody to take this test, and because they're the wrong people in the wrong place. And so, but go ahead with what you thought, because the thing is that I see, if somebody could align their purpose and their passion and then attach it their profession, see the mountain of influence they could impact, and how greatly it would change and open up areas of massive influence. I mean, I've seen you do that. And the thing that's been so cool cool is to see the way that as you grow in certain gifts and they begin to manifest within you, how there's the right word is unction or anointing that begins to show up in that area. And so tell us about that. I mean, you finish your thought and anywhere.
Well, yeah, we were talking about how, this person's miserable in their job, right? They're in a position of collections where you got to be forceful with people and say, look, I don't care, you owe the money, give it, but they're a mercy. It's like a mercy in a job.
You can have 3 more weeks, or
my dog died, or my so and so and whatever. Mercy's gonna be sit there and going, empathizing, feeling all the pain. They're gonna be the least likely person to try to get money in a collection scenario. And so no wonder that person's miserable going to work every day to their job, because there's a total misalignment. Well, one day I was teaching this, and this person who was self-employed, had her own business, and it was actually somebody I sponsored through the program. It's a longer story we have time to deal with here, but as my uncle would say, a God wink kind of scenario. Her gift was mercy, which aligns with family, right? So, and we're going through the story, and maybe you're misaligned and whatever. And she was a florist. She had her own business as a florist, and she didn't agree with what I was saying. She's like, well, I love my job. This is great. But family, I don't see, because she's thinking I got to be a stay-at-home mom, right?
Right. And, yeah, misinterpretation there.
Yeah. So I said, well, okay. So I asked her for the benefit, I knew what her job was, but for the benefit of the class, I asked, so okay, what is your business? She goes, well, I'm a florist. I said, okay, what do you typically make flowers for? Oh, well, birthdays, weddings. I'm going, oh.
I mean, it's like, sorry, I totally, I'm like, oh, that was subtle. That was really good.
Yeah, it like halfway through her list, her own light bulb went off. Like,
purple smoke and all, right?
Like, oh, okay. No wonder I love my job so much, because she's doing something that caters to family, typically. So, it's if you can identify, first of all, what your dominant gift is, and then just look at those spheres of influence and say, okay, am I misaligned, or am I on the right path? Or do I need to make a change, whatever. And, for me, when I looked at my giftings of teaching and service and what those line up with, well, and also the prophesying, professing, not prophesying as thus saith the Lord or anything, but professing, what you understand as truth. Well, that lines up with media, and of course, service lines up with arts and entertainment, and teaching lines up with education. So I'm all about all those three, and really those three, if not two of the three, have a profound impact on the rest of them. So I got real excited about them, because when you look at everything from fashion to the elections is manipulated, in the minds of people through media, arts, and entertainment. In fact, George Lucas actually once said at a university setting, he said, for better or worse, the church, which used to be all powerful, has been usurped by film.
Oh, yeah. And you even made a note one time that on a Sunday morning, there were more cars in the theater than there were at the church.
Yeah, well, not just that. I went on a Tuesday afternoon at like 3:00 in the afternoon. Because I was like, I'm reading these statistics. The Nielsen report says the average person watches 4 to 5 hours of television a day. Then I look on MovieMojo.com and see that the Americans spend upwards of $11 billion a year going to the movies. So I'm going, do a poll on, see if the average American even spends more than an hour in church a week, never mind a day. The local Cinemark at like 2:00, 3:00 in the afternoon on a work day, and the parking lot's practically full, at least half full. Go across the street to the largest mega church in the Metroplex, 23,000 member congregation, and aside from the staff that works there, parking lot's empty, right? Mm-hmm. And any other church, same thing. It's even worse, the smaller churches. So I'm going, there's the perfect picture right there of who's being more effective at impacting culture. And it totally solidified in my mind what George Lucas had said, is because culture is definitely being a lot more influenced by media, arts, and entertainment than it is in the church. And so much the more, when I was a missionary, the organization that I was a part of specialized in what they call restricted access countries. And these are places where typically less than 2% of the population identified themselves as Christian or having any understanding of who Yeshua or Jesus Christ even is. And in that list was Spain. And I'm like, Spain?
Really?
Yeah, Spain was listed as not necessarily restricted access, because we had plenty of access. It wasn't locked down like a communist or a Muslim country or something like that. So there was certainly, they had freedom of expression of religion, but they had enormous apathy and just didn't care. And of course, you had this unfortunate thing called the Inquisition that totally jacked up that whole society, for hundreds of years. No wonder they don't want anything to do with religion after, all the horrors that went through with that. But I mean, that just shows you that, if you want to say a first world country like that, identifying less than 2% of the population identifying themselves as Christian. And so, when I look at my giftings, my talents, my abilities, my life in general, I mean, I've been literally groomed to try to take what I believe to the world through the medium of arts and entertainment. And so much the more so these days when, if you've been following the news, have been all this disclosure taking place with, Navy pilots and everybody else talking about UFOs and everything. There's what I believe is a coming great deception that's going to be so great that Scripture says even the elect could be deceived by. Well, is the church talking about UFOs, aliens, and that stuff? No. Is there anything out there combating the ancient alien narrative? No. Not that I'm aware of. I mean, there's a few speakers like myself out there doing conferences and stuff like that, trying to make people aware, but there's nothing in media, arts, and entertainment directly combating the ancient alien narrative. So that's why I'm trying to do Seed.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a TV series designed to take all of the research that I've done in the 11 books that I've published and countless other blogs and stuff like that. Yeah, I reach a few thousand people on YouTube and, maybe even millions through the blogs and stuff like that, but I'm not reaching 7 billion people like George Lucas is doing. Everybody knows about the Avengers. Everybody knows about Star Trek. I could ask through an interpreter, where does the phrase "May the Force be with you?" and people living in grass huts on stilts in Northeast India could tell me Star Wars. Ask them about John 3:16, and they're huh? So that's why for me it is my passion, as you say, take my passion and make it my profession. Well, my profession is now to try to take and distill all that information, put it into a package that will go into a mountain, in this case arts and entertainment, that has the power and ability to literally impact the world.
Now, one of the things though is that you're taking the concept of seed and the genesis of seed. What a nice way to set that up. Is what? Tell us a little bit about seed, the concept, where it came from, and its vision. But the thing that I'm so excited is that you are not just attacking a single method of message delivery. I've seen you do the series, and then you've got a number of other things. So tell us about the genesis of seed.
Well, look, I grew up probably like you and many of us on Star Wars, Star Trek, all that stuff. Loved all that kind of stuff. Science fiction, fantasy genre. So that's something that I'm immediately attracted to, and those genres are the largest. In fact, in my business plan, I wrote out the top 10 grossing films worldwide, films of all time, or actually over the last 10 years. Were all either science fiction or fantasy or superhero, like all of them. The only exception was the top grossing film, I forget what year it was the year American Sniper came out. So that was the only exception, because everything else was like superhero and all that, and sci-fi. Oh, so that's a huge genre to bring forth a message, and it's certainly been effective on the other side when you consider the messages of evolution, panspermia, secular humanism. Pick a subject. They've been very effective. So when I look in Scripture, the first prophecy that I see in the Bible, talk about professing, right? First prophecy that I see is God telling the serpent that Eve's seed is going to crush his head, and that begins a seed war from that point on. Get a few next chapter, right? You got Cain killing Abel. If you're the serpent receiving that prophecy, her seed's going to crush my head. What do you think I'm going to do?
Take out her seed.
Yeah, getting my head crushed is a bad thing. So first thing I'm going to do is try to take out her seed. So he gets Cain to kill Abel, right? So the one predisposed to listening to the evil one kills the one that was good. Okay, well then they have a third child, Seth. And I always ask people, if you had two children and one killed the other, and then you have a third, don't you think you might be a little bit protective over your third child?
Yeah, a little bit.
Maybe just a little bit. So yeah, I don't think that the enemy was able to get to Seth. So plan B, turn to Genesis chapter 6, and you read about angels coming down and mating with women and creating angel-human hybrids called the Nephilim, which were giants that became the great men of renown, i.e. the gods of antiquity. Josephus identifies the first-generation offspring as the Titans of Greek mythology. So there's a massive, epic story there that I've never seen told.
Right.
And I'm going, well, maybe I'm the one to tell it then, find a need and fill it, right? That's one of the number one rules of marketing, But for me, it's much more than just marketing. I'm not doing it just for the sake of marketing. I'm doing it because this is something I'm actually very passionate about, is understanding this, because in school, we were all taught the Greek myths. We had to read the Odyssey and the Iliad and all that stuff and get graded on it. Did we have to read Scripture? No. So I'm like, well, we've got to get something out there that is the antithesis of this thing that we've been indoctrinated in our entire lives. And that is this whole idea of the gods and the ancient alien narrative. Ancient Aliens is on the History Channel, for crying out loud.
7.
Yeah, it's like 11 seasons. There's 11 or 12 seasons now.
Yeah, they have that thing running like all the time.
It's always
7. Bam. They'll have one channel just on that. And anytime, day or night, you want to check up on the ancient alien theory and who the astronauts were or whatever, astronauts, they were, you get it. So, yeah. Anyway, so you've got the concept out of Genesis 6. That's my Genesis store reference.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're doing some amazing things with it. I know that one of the things that I was really excited about with you is that, you look at some of the most successful series that have happened, and you have the way that, I look at what you're creating, and these are my terms, and just as far as, I think we've talked about this before, but I look at X-Files meets Battlestar Galactica meets what's the third one?
Lost.
Lost. Yeah, that was the third one I was trying to think. Yeah.
I
concept.
Yeah, actually, I've changed the pitch a little bit. I pitch Seed as Lost meets the Unit wrapped up in the X-Files. I used to say Lost meets Battlestar Galactica wrapped up in the X-Files, but my research,
that one,
my research over the last 4 years kind of pushed the Galactica side out a little bit, not entirely, because one of the things that people may not understand about Galactica is that show was done by Glenn Larson, I think was his name, who is a Mormon, and there was a lot of Mormon theology throughout the Battlestar Galactica narrative.
Oh, so he's sowing a seed.
Yeah, he was.
And what you're trying to do is essentially, it's the same kind of concepts as far as touching and persuading and maybe even opening. I know a lot of your vision, though, isn't it, Rob, to just challenge people to ask the question, what if?
Yeah, absolutely. My goal is not to preach to them. My goal is to plant seeds hence one of the many reasons why I call it seed, that the savvy audience can water and then eventually see a harvest. And this concept was most beautifully illustrated by something I heard from Mel Gibson when he was putting out The Passion of the Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he financed that himself. Hollywood totally disowned him on the whole thing. And one of the ways he marketed it, since nobody wanted to touch it, was he strategically went to evangelical leaders all around the country, probably the world, and got them behind the project. And then when it finally came out, of course, if anybody's seen it, it's a very powerful movie. Some of the evangelical leaders in the country thought, this is so powerful, why don't you put an invitation to receive Jesus at the end of the movie, as run just as I am at the credits roll or something. And Mel just kind of chuckled. He said, no guys, that's not my job, that's your job. He said, my job is to put compelling images up on that screen, your job is to do the follow-up. And I'm like, that's genius. That's exactly everything that I'm about, everything that I was thinking. He perfectly encapsulated in that set of statements right there. Is people don't go to the movies or watch episodic television to be preached to. They could go to TBN or, CBN or whatever if that's what they want, they can surf to a preaching channel. But most people that the Nielsen report says is watching 4 to 5 hours of TV a day are channel surfing for entertainment. They're going to be entertained. However, what I've learned is the enemy has figured out how to preach without being preachy, and has done so for decades by planting little seeds of information that each successive television series or movie builds on what has been done before. That's watering the seed until eventually he has entire communities and countries and people groups, cultures believing in ancient aliens. It's been seeded throughout decades. And part of my
you would think that Gene Roddenberry was that good, right?
Well, actually, I looked into a little bit of that, and actually, Dr. Michael Salla talks about some of the various people that were influences on his life and how he was groomed for things, and the founder of forget his name, Outer Limits, and how these people were actually put into place to seed a narrative, ahead of time, to get people. When Orson Welles did War of the Worlds, right? Mm-hmm. In the I think it was 1930s, whenever it was. No, it was early. It was either late 20s or early 30s, whatever it was. People flipped out. People went crazy. Well, okay, so we're not ready for the alien narrative. So what happens right after that? You have a whole ton of often B movies, black and white B movies of the brain and from Mars that ate, Chicago or whatever. You had all these, the space and alien type of stories that, and of course, Twilight Zone and Outer Limits, and then eventually Star Trek, putting out the stuff in for so long to the point where you get to the 1980s and Independence Day. What do you see in that movie? When the spaceship parks over the city, you have millions of people getting on top of buildings with signs saying, take me, right before the thing, destroys everybody. But that movie so perfectly illustrated the change in human mentality from the 1930s to the 1980s, after 50 years of indoctrination, of how that seeding idea has worked. And I went and saw the first Thor movie when it came out. And look, as a filmmaker, I go to movies first for entertainment value, just to turn my brain off and enjoy a movie.
Fun.
But if I like it, or even sometimes if I hate it, I will, as a filmmaker, I'll say, okay, why did I like it? Why did I hate it? And sometimes I'll go back just to figure out the answer to those questions. Was it the writing, the directing, the special effects, what the story, what was it? So when I went back to see Thor the second time, I enjoyed it again, but I came out very grieved in my spirit, because here's a huge, big budget movie, the hundreds of millions, $150 million movie that grosses billions, that has the same message I have. The Son of God saves the world. Well, the problem is it's the wrong son of the wrong god. In this case, Thor, son of Odin, right? So, and of course, at the same time period, you had Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief come out. You have Clash of the Titans. So you have, in this case, you have the son of Poseidon and the son of Zeus, respectively. So all these movies, Son of God Saves the World, comes out, right? And I'm frustrated by that. I'm praying about it. I'm like, God, what's the deal? And I felt like the Holy Spirit told me that I have got to become as good at telling the truth as lies. And so I
say that again. That warbled on yet. It's the son of say that last again.
Yeah, my commission is that I have got to become as good at telling the truth as they are at telling lies.
Right. And what's so funny is that, I mean, people just, we tend to, love the entertainment, but we don't realize that it's edutainment. Yeah, it's edutainment, but it's edutainment. And we don't think about that. And so I so am grateful that you're taking this message of Seed and trying to get people challenged to connect, to step up. I'm curious if how much have you seen of Mel Gibson's next project, Resurrection?
Well, yeah. Interestingly enough, there was a guy who was wanting to be an executive producer for me on Seed, who was also working on trying to raise money and awareness for the Resurrection Project, and he had an early script of that project. Now, whether or not that will be the script that makes it to the screen, that remains to be seen. Typically not. Scripts go through, it's always said scripts are not written, they're all rewritten, which is true. But in the early drafts that I had seen, Mel was planning on taking us, we got the Passion, which was the last 24 hours or so of Christ's life, right? When the resurrection, you think, okay, he's dead for 3 days and then he rises. What's the story? Well, there's actually a lot going on there. Of course, you have whatever was going on with the disciples at that time, whatever was going on with the Romans at that time. But what was going on with Jesus at that time? What was Yeshua doing? Well, you read scripture, you see that he goes down into Hades at that time. And it says that he preaches to those in prison. Well, the word preach there is caruso. Preach is an appropriate translated word, but would be a better translation would be heralded in victory. It's a victory statement. It's
right. Yeah. Because I mean, what he was declaring at the time was,
I won.
I won. Yeah.
Yeah.
And depending on, I mean, there'd be a lot of ways to image that. Back then, the way that a victor declared I won is they basically chain up the offender. In this case, it would have been the devil or whatever, right? And they would have stripped his garments off of the back of himself and then walked him in front of everybody, bare butt. Kind of a scene out of Game of Thrones, only with a front to it. And then everybody would just throw him tomatoes or whatever. And you think that would be really cool in hell.
Well, yeah, because the book of Enoch talks about the 200 watchers that landed on Mount Hermon in the days of Jared, and it elaborates in great detail on what Genesis 6 just gives you a couple of sentences. So you get an entire book that elaborates on the couple of sentences that you get in Genesis. And those angels that participated in what I call the Genesis 6 experiment, they were bound up in chains in Tartarus. Now, Tartarus in the Greek mythology is the prison of the gods, right? So if that's where Yeshua went, then they were already bound and already stripped and already,
chained,
and he's like, you tried to stop me from being here. Genesis 3 is when the seed war kicked off. Genesis 6 was your attempt to try to wipe out the seed by putting your seed in. You lose, I win. I'm taking the keys, and oh, by the way, I'll be back, and it's not going to be good for you. See ya. Right.
Yeah. Well, what's funny though is because I'm it's cool. I know that believe me, you and I can and have talked for days on all of this stuff, and I love it. But what we ought to do is kind of wrap up and say you've taken your purpose, your passion, your gifting, combine them to create this amazing profession. You're creating books, you're creating content, you're creating movies, videos, a TV series. You're working on that. You're also doing it in a graphic and an audio version. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I mean, the thing is, TV shows and movies cost millions of dollars. And what occurred to me in that is that there's a direct correlation in terms of impact. Think of one person, $1. When you think of the billions that have been influenced, billions of people that have been influenced by Star Trek, for instance, well, there's a direct correlation. How many millions, probably billions of dollars went into the production of how many series have they had now? Yeah, the original series, Space Nine, how many of them do they have, right? So, and each one runs for what, 3 to 7 seasons long,
Mm-hmm.
and each of those episodes easily cost $1 to $4 million, I'd imagine, to produce. Maybe not so much the original series that was done on a catering budget, basically. But as the series progressed and the budgets expanded, and then they start making movies, and they're still making movies, well, there's a direct correlation. The amount of money they are willing to put into influencing the culture has paid off. $1, one person, and that's just one franchise, right? I mean, think of all the other franchises that are out there that have influenced culture. So look, it takes millions to reach millions. It takes billions to reach billions. And it doesn't take much research to confirm that. So unfortunately, I don't have millions and I don't have billions. I have scripts. I have ideas. I am now trying to raise that money and try to get people to understand what I'm trying to do. Because look, I got 180,000 subscribers on YouTube. If everybody gives me $30, boom, I'm funded.
Right.
I mean, it's literally that easy. If people could just catch the vision. I mean, you're spending the money going to the movies. Why don't you, if you believe in what I'm talking about here, and if you appreciate, look, I put up 500 videos on YouTube. I've got thousands of pages of blog content. I've done hundreds of interviews like this and radio shows and stuff like that, all for free. And so I'm just basically saying, look, is that all that 10 years now I've been doing that? Is that worth $30 to try to combat what they have been doing for decades?
Right.
So it can happen. We can make it happen, but it's going to cost a lot. So in the meantime, while I don't have the
money, you're dancing around an issue, and I want to make sure you actually say, how does someone help?
Okay, well, I'll do a screen
share. Where they go and what they do.
Yeah, well, if you go to the website, seedtheseries.com, you'll see a couple of links. I've redone the website completely from scratch. So that's what it sounds like. Sow into seed. You click the sow button and it takes you to a page that will show you how to sow into seed, if my internet catches up here. So I've got several projects that I'm working on, depending on what people are excited about. I've got a comic book graphic novel series that we're working on. So you click on that, learn about that. A fiction novel where you take the existing screenplays and turn them into fiction novels. Video games, very excited about this. Got some fantastic movement recently on this project. Working on it, of course, the big project is the TV series. And all of these three, whatever proceeds come in from the products that were created here, go into financing this. So, it's all synergistically meant to work together. So people could click on those to look at it, to learn how to sow into it. If you want to understand it, what is seed? What's this all about? Click on the C button, and that takes you to a page that describes the project. Again, Lost Meets the Unit, Wrapped Up in the X-Files, and gets into all that. And if you just want to go to the new website, click on the click here to enter the site, and that will take people to the new homepage, which really has. This is very mobile friendly, so people have cell phones, whatever, can scroll down and look at it. There's a 27-page general overview, like a mini business plan here. You can read the first script for free. Listen to the audio drama version we did. We took the scripts and got actors to do the voices and sound effects and music and all that for back in 2014. Other things that you can click on there, videos, what's this all about, the projects again. This shows where I am in the fundraising so far, sort of like a thermometer, show where we are, how people can give here, frequently asked questions, blogs about the show, talent, people have contributed pictures and stuff they've done, and of course contact. Now, I've made a specific page regarding the ask that I just did. Say, hey, look, 10 years of giving stuff away, is that worth something to you? People who are interested can go to seedtheseries.com/make it happen. Make it happen. So, and then they can click here and that will take them directly to the YouTube gift page. And it basically just says, it's my ask to my existing subscribers. And I just did my first ask about a week ago, and we've already got about 17,000. But look, we got to raise millions. So, that's how people can see how to do it and get involved if they want to.
I just, because I'm going, don't walk by this. You're right in the middle of telling people, this stuff's good, then fund it. Here's how. And so, Rob, I just want to say, I'm so excited about where you're going. I always have been. I've watched you for the last, 15, 16 years. And, folks, I just encourage you to realize, here's just another example of somebody who has taken one gift and just used it over and over again. Like you said, that umbrella, you started with that. And I think, isn't it amazing how one gift can direct you to a purpose, a passion, a profession, and really impact in a nation? I mean, the thing that'll be really fun to see, Rob, is how can your message, how many ways that it can be sown into the culture over the next 50 years? Can it be something that would grow like a seed that Gene Roddenberry dropped? And I mean, that was actually considered a failure. Mm-hmm. They pulled Star Trek after 3 years and somebody else took his place just that fast. And then, but reruns and story and method and message, and then a second Next Generation, and then and like you said, and now Star Trek Enterprise with Michael Burnham, and darn, it actually got me on another one, right?
Well, yeah, and I'm still watching all that stuff too. I mean, I enjoy it.
One story you haven't told, and why don't you say this and we'll sign off, is 1977. You have just sat down and watched the message that is going to shift your life. Mm-hmm. What were you watching?
Star Wars. Yeah. I was 7 years old, and that was actually the same year that I accepted Christ as my savior. So two really profound things impacted my life, that being the dominant one, obviously, that sent me on the path of the Christian that I am today. But that same year, Star Wars came out, and my 7-year-old butt was sitting in that seat watching that Star Destroyer come overhead, and like my eyes got like this big. I'm like, what is happening? And of course, the whole movie played out, and I was jacked out of my mind. I mean, that year that it came out, my grandfather had retired, and I'm the only boy in the family. I have one sister and all girl cousins. So Grandpa retired. He's like, "What do you want to do today, Robbie?" "I want to see Star Wars." So, well over a dozen times, Grandpa took me with a different friend or whatever to see Star Wars. Grandpa's like, yeah, man. I mean, of course, a lot of people in our generation, I'm sure, can relate to that.
But not many of them took the concept. You fell in love with making movies there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I knew at that point what I was going to do with the rest of my life. In fact, by the time I was 8 years old, I had made a public declaration. I said, I will either be an astronaut, a movie star, a filmmaker, or dead by the time I'm 30. Wow. And at 8 years old, because 30 is like, that's old people. So,
yeah. And how old are you this week or this month?
I'll be 50 next week. Happy birthday to you, by the way, today.
I'm ancient, but go ahead.
Well, to an 8-year-old, it wasn't like I had a death wish. It's just to an 8-year-old, 30 is, my thinking was I will have achieved one of those things by the time I'm 30, or I'd have to be dead. Like to my mind, there's no other way. I couldn't. And, I had achieved to some level those things. I had shot for NASA. I became a helicopter pilot, and I was heading down that path. But I believe God was denying that path for a good reason, because I had school dates to go to the next level of my training 4 times, and not because of me. I always excelled in everything I was doing to achieve those goals. It was always something outside my control that bumped me from the school dates or whatever. So I got out, then became an actor, and then I said, well, I'm going to start making movies. And so I ended up getting into corporate video, then making movies for missionaries and stuff like that. So to some degree, I achieved my goal, but it wasn't the big goal. And I felt like in 2009, I got a tap on my shoulder, and I felt like I was saying, "Hey, you want that dream? Let's do this together." And in 2010, he plugged a the end of 2009, December, he plugged a USB cable in the back of my head and downloaded 72 episodes of the TV series that became known as Seed. So, it really does go back to that. And again, George Lucas had a profound impact on my life, other people, you know, through this medium of arts and entertainment. So, my deserves the same thing.
I just love it. I love it. And again, thank you for doing this with me today. It's fun to go through the little series. It's fun to go through the test. And if you're questioning, interested in getting the test, taking the test, I really am actually very interested in you emailing me afterwards and saying, "Man, that rocked. That exactly matched me." There are a number of resources out there. I know on my YouTube channel. I know Rob, you and I have talked about this stuff before. There are it's just a great thing to really understand. Where's your purpose? Where's your passion? How can you take your purpose, your passion, turn it into your profession, but then have the unction, the power, the influence, the anointing, if you want to call it, to affect a part of a nation, like taking your own mountain of influence. I just love that. It's so amazing. I know you're doing it. I know you're going to do amazing things, Rob. I've seen it for years, and I believe in you, and I'm grateful. If they want to get a hold of you, go to seedtheseries.com. Is that correct?
Yeah, seedtheseries.com if they're interested in that project. robschannel.com is another, that's sort of the hub to get to everything else. So if you're interested in other things that I've been doing, robschannel.com will take you there. But yeah, seedtheseries.com is the big project. That's what I'm working on. So
yeah, and it's going to touch the nations. I'm so excited about that. If you want to get a copy of the email, email me to get a copy of the test and the characteristics. No problem. Patrick at doersuccess.com. And with that, I just want to say, Rob, thank you again. As always, love you, man. Can't wait to see you next time. And stop disappearing off the earth. And for today. Go ahead.
I just want to say, to your audience as well as to my audience, because I'll mirror this video on my channel, that everything that I've been able to accomplish since 2003 is largely due to this man right here that you guys are watching that's on with me, Patrick Dewar. He's been a dear friend to me. He's been like a surrogate father when I moved from Massachusetts, where my parents lived, to Texas, and a mentor to me. So literally everything I've done since 2003 is largely due to what Patrick has sown into my life, and the stuff that we're talking about here is just a tiny part of it. I mean, this man is a wealth of information, of knowledge, and coaching. You need a coach, he's the guy. So I highly encourage everybody that may be watching this video to get in contact with Pat Dewar and see what he has to say, because he can certainly help direct your life just as he has done mine.
Yeah, you're too kind. Thank you so much, Rob. It's always a blessing. Hey, let's keep in touch. I know there's lots of things left to do, and I can't wait to see Seed on the big screen.
Right on, bro. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Take care.